What if the you trying to manifest your dreams is the very obstacle preventing them? Think about it. Right now, as you read these words, there's a voice in your head narrating your experience. A voice that says, I want, I need, I deserve. We've been taught that this voice, this sense of I, is the hero of our manifestation story. The one who must work harder, visualize better, believe stronger. But what if that's the cosmic joke? What if the separate self you're trying to empower is nothing more than a habit of thought, a convention, a mask that infinite consciousness wears when it wants to play hide and seek with itself? Dr. Ernest Holmes discovered something extraordinary about manifestation. He found that the power we seek isn't locked behind the gates of a separate God, waiting for us to prove ourselves worthy. No, the divine mind, as he called it, is the only mind that exists. Which means every time you think I am manifesting, what's really happening is that the universe is manifesting through the aperture you call you. Here's the twist that changes everything. The ancient Vedantic masters, thousands of years before Holmes, arrived at the same shocking conclusion. They had a word for this ultimate reality: Brahman, the infinite, unchanging, all-pervading consciousness. And they had another word for what you call yourself: Atman, the individual soul. Their most radical teaching, the one that still shatters minds today, was this: Atman is Brahman. You are that. Not you will become that if you manifest correctly. Not you are connected to that through prayer. You are that right now, pretending very convincingly to be something separate and small. So here's the question that might just rewire your entire approach to manifestation. What if the reason your desires feel so far away is because there's a you standing in the way? What if the power Ernest Holmes spoke of, that God-given power, can only flow freely when the illusion of the separate manifester dissolves? What we're about to explore isn't just a new manifestation technique. It's an invitation to see through the ultimate illusion, the one wearing your name. Because once you realize that the ocean was never separate from the wave, manifestation stops being work. It becomes play, the divine play of consciousness, dancing with itself. Let's dismantle something you've believed your entire life. The idea that you are a separate entity, isolated inside a body, looking out at a world that exists independently of you. This belief, this sense of being a separate self, is so fundamental to how we experience reality that questioning it feels almost dangerous. But here's what both Ernest Holmes and the Vedantic sages understood. This separation is not a fact. It's a perception, and like all perceptions, it can shift. Holmes called it the divine mind, one infinite intelligence expressing itself through infinite forms. He said, there is one life, and that life is God. That life is my life now. Not my life will connect to God's life. Not my life is blessed by God's life. My life is God's life, happening right here, right now. But let's be honest, that sounds beautiful as poetry, but how does it actually work? How can there be only one mind when you clearly have thoughts that are yours, and I have thoughts that are mine? This is where the ancient Vedantists become our guides into deeper territory. They described consciousness not as something you have, but as what you fundamentally are. Imagine the ocean. Now imagine a single wave rising from that ocean. The wave has a shape, a height, a momentary form. From the wave's perspective, if it could think, it might say, I am this wave separate from all other waves. But is it? Or is it simply ocean, temporarily expressing as wave? You are that wave. The separate self you call I, with its name, its history, its wants and fears, is a temporary pattern that consciousness has formed. Not a separate thing, but a momentary expression of the whole. The Vedantists called this Maya, the cosmic illusion. Not an illusion that nothing exists, but the illusion that things exist separately. Alan Watts, who spent his life translating Eastern wisdom for Western minds, put it brilliantly. You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself. Think about that. Every time you say, I am aware, what's actually happening is the universe becoming aware of itself through the particular shape called you. Now here's where this connects to manifestation in a way that changes everything. If you are a separate self, then manifestation is a transaction. You over here asking the universe over there to give you something you don't have. It's a relationship of lack, of distance, of hope. And hope, as beautiful as it sounds, always contains an element of doubt, because hope exists in the gap between what is and what you want. But if the Vedantists and Holmes are right, if there is only one consciousness playing all the roles, then manifestation isn't about getting, it's about allowing. It's about the one infinite consciousness which you are, reshaping its own experience. The Buddhist Mahayana tradition adds another layer to this understanding with the concept of sunyata, often translated as emptiness or void. But this isn't the emptiness of nihilism, of nothingness. It's the emptiness of infinite potential, like a blank canvas that can hold any painting, or silence that can hold any sound. Your desires, your dreams, they're not foreign objects you need to pull into your reality from outside. They're movements within the same consciousness that's reading these words right now. The dreamer and the dream are one. So the paradigm we're deconstructing is this: the myth of the separate manifester, struggling to bend reality to their will. What we're discovering instead is something far more elegant. Reality is already bending, already flowing, already manifesting continuously. The question is not how do I make it happen, but how do I stop blocking what's trying to happen through me? Now let's trace this radical idea through the voices of those who've seen through the veil. Ernest Holmes wasn't working in isolation when he developed his science of mind. He was drinking from the same well that has nourished mystics across millennia. In 1926, when Holmes published The Science of Mind, he synthesized Western New Thought with principles that the East had been whispering for thousands of years. Holmes wrote, "The mind of God is the only mind that exists, because life is within us." This wasn't speculation for him. It was direct insight. He recognized that what Christianity called the kingdom of heaven within, what Emerson called the oversoul, and what the Vedantists called Brahman, were different fingers pointing at the same moon. Let's go deeper into the Vedantic source. The Upanishads, those ancient Sanskrit texts composed between 800 and 200 BCE, contain perhaps the most direct statements about the nature of reality ever written. The Chandogya Upanishad tells the story of a father teaching his son Svetaketu about the ultimate nature of existence. The father asks his son to break open a fruit seed. "What do you see inside?" The son replies, "Nothing, father." And the father says, "My dear, from that very essence which you cannot see, this mighty tree grows. That subtle essence is the reality of all that exists. That is the self. That is truth. Tat tvam asi. Thou art that. Tat tvam asi. You are that." Three words that contain the entire philosophy of non-dual manifestation. Not you will become that through practice. Not you are a part of that. You are that, appearing as this apparent individual. The Bhagavad Gita, another cornerstone of Vedantic wisdom, approaches this from a different angle. Krishna tells Arjuna, "I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me." But then, crucially, he reveals that this I he speaks of is not separate from Arjuna himself. The divine speaking is the same divine listening. Buddhism, particularly the Mahayana school, contributes the doctrine of sunyata, emptiness. Nagarjuna, the great Buddhist philosopher of the 2nd century, taught that all phenomena are empty of inherent independent existence. Nothing exists by itself, as itself, for itself. Everything is interdependent, co-arising, a seamless web of mutual causation. What does this mean for manifestation? It means your desire and its fulfillment are not separate events connected by time and effort. They're two aspects of the same movement of consciousness, already unified in the groundless ground of emptiness. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we find Alan Watts building a bridge between these ancient insights and modern Western seekers. Watts had a gift for demolishing our conventional assumptions with humor and precision. He wrote, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. The you trying to manifest is the you that cannot be grasped, because it's not a thing. It's a process, a verb masquerading as a noun." Watts explained that the ego, this sense of being a separate agent, is a social institution with no physical reality. We learn it like we learn language. Children don't naturally think of themselves as isolated subjects. They experience a fluid, boundaryless awareness. Only through socialization do we develop the habit of saying I, as if it refers to a solid, permanent entity. And here's where Holmes and Watts shake hands across their different vocabularies. Both understood that what we call manifestation is actually the universe's inherent creativity, expressing through the form we temporarily call ourselves. Holmes approached it through metaphysics and spiritual mind treatment. Watts approached it through Zen and Vedanta, but they arrived at the same liberating truth. The Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu around the 6th century BCE, offers yet another perspective. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The ultimate reality, the source from which all manifestation springs, cannot be captured in concepts. It can only be lived, embodied, allowed. Lao Tzu teaches Wu Wei, often translated as non-doing or effortless action. Not the non-action of laziness, but the action that flows naturally when we stop forcing, stop striving, stop pretending to be the separate doer. This is manifestation at its highest level, desire fulfilled through non-resistance, through alignment with what already is. If these ideas resonate with you, consider subscribing so we can continue this journey together. Here's what all these sources are pointing toward. The power Ernest Holmes spoke of isn't something you acquire. It's what you are when the illusion of separation temporarily thins. Every saint, sage, and mystic who's touched this truth reports the same thing, an overwhelming sense of unity, of being the whole cosmos in disguise, playing the game of forgetting and remembering. So we're not learning a new manifestation method. We're unlearning the fundamental mistake that made manifestation seem difficult in the first place, the belief that there's a separate you who must struggle to get something from an unwilling universe. That whole drama is a case of mistaken identity. So how do we actually live this? How do we translate the philosophy of non-duality into practical wisdom that changes our daily experience of desire and manifestation? The ancient Vedantists weren't just philosophers sitting in caves having mystical experiences. They developed a precise map for the journey from identification with the separate self to recognition of our true nature. They called these practices Sadhana Chatushtaya, the fourfold qualification. Think of them as the operating system for non-dual manifestation. Let's break down each component and make it actionable. The first practice, Viveka, discrimination. Viveka is the cultivation of discernment between what's real and what's merely appearance, between what's permanent and what's temporary. In the context of manifestation, this practice asks you to distinguish between your true desires and the desires of your conditioned self. Here's how it works in daily life. When a desire arises, pause. Don't suppress it, don't chase it immediately. Ask yourself, is this desire arising from my sense of lack, from the story that I am incomplete? Or is this desire a natural expression of consciousness expanding through my form? For example, you want financial abundance. Viveka asks, do I want money because I believe it will finally make me whole, complete, worthy? Or do I want it as a tool for greater creative expression and service? The first desire comes from the false self, the separate ego trying to fill an imaginary hole. The second comes from recognizing abundance as your natural state, simply seeking new forms of flow. Practice this discrimination daily. When you notice yourself thinking, I need this to be happy, that's your cue. Happiness isn't waiting at the end of manifestation. Happiness is the ground from which true manifestation springs. The practice is catching yourself in the act of putting conditions on your wholeness and gently releasing them. The second practice, Vairagya, dispassion. Now this word causes confusion. Dispassion doesn't mean not caring. It doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. It means not being enslaved by outcomes. It's the difference between preference and desperate clinging. Alan Watts called this the wisdom of insecurity. He taught that our constant grasping for security, for guaranteed outcomes, is what creates our suffering. True security comes from being at home with uncertainty, with the flowing nature of reality. In manifestation terms, Vairagya is the practice of holding your desires lightly. You visualize your dream life, yes. You take inspired action, absolutely. But you don't make your peace conditional on getting exactly what you pictured. You remain open to something even better, something your limited perspective couldn't imagine. Here's the daily practice. After you've done your visualization or affirmation work, practice the phrase, this or something better. Feel the release that comes with those words. You're not abandoning your desire. You're liberating it from the prison of your expectations. You're saying to consciousness, I trust you to manifest through me in whatever way serves the highest unfolding. Think of your desires like holding a bird. Close your fist too tight and you crush it. Open your hand completely in fear of holding it wrong, and it flies away. Vairagya is the middle way, an open palm, an invitation, not a cage. The third practice, Shatsampat, the 6 virtues. This is where the rubber meets the road. The 6 virtues are qualities that create the internal environment for non-dual awareness to flourish. Let's make each one practical. Shama, tranquility of mind. This is your daily meditation practice. Even 5 minutes of sitting in silence, watching thoughts arise and dissolve like waves, trains your mind to recognize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear. When you know this experientially, desperate manifestation energy transforms into peaceful allowing. Dharma, control of the senses. Not suppression, but conscious choice. This means noticing when you're compulsively consuming, whether it's food, media, or scrolling social media, for validation. Each time you pause before automatically reaching for distraction, you strengthen your capacity to choose your focus. And where your focus goes, manifestation follows. Uparati, withdrawal. Periodically stepping back from the constant doing. This might mean a technology Sabbath 1 day a week, or simply 15 minutes of doing absolutely nothing. In these gaps, you remember that you are the space in which life happens, not just the actor in life's drama. Titiksha, forbearance. The capacity to remain centered when things don't go according to your plan. When a desire seems blocked, instead of panicking or forcing, you practice asking, what is this situation teaching me? What am I being invited to see? Often, what looks like a closed door is consciousness redirecting you towards something better. Shraddha, faith, not blind belief, but experiential trust. Each time you act from your intuition and it works out, you're building Shraddha. Each time you let go of control and watch things flow anyway, you're deepening it. This is faith earned through evidence, through repeated experiences of being held by something larger than your small self. Samadhana, focus, the practice of single-pointed attention. In a world of infinite distraction, the ability to focus your mind is a superpower. When you can hold your attention on your desired reality without wavering, without being pulled into doubt or comparison, you're aligning all of your energy in one direction. The universe has no choice but to respond. The fourth practice, mumukshutva, burning desire for liberation. Here's the paradox that contains everything. You must have an intense desire for freedom from desire. Not freedom from wanting, but freedom from the tyranny of believing that your happiness depends on getting what you want. This is what Ernest Holmes meant when he spoke of spiritual conviction followed by spiritual experience. You must want to know the truth of who you are more than you want any particular manifestation, because once you know who you are, as infinite consciousness itself, manifestation becomes effortless play rather than desperate work. The daily practice here is simple but profound. Each morning, before you think about what you want to manifest, ask yourself, who am I really? Not what roles do I play, not what labels describe me, but what am I at the deepest level? Sit with that question. Don't rush to answer it with concepts. Let the question work on you. Over time, something shifts. The question stops being intellectual and becomes experiential. You begin to notice moments where the sense of separation thins. A moment in nature where you can't tell where you end and the world begins. A moment of creative flow where there's no you doing the creating, just creating, happening. A moment of deep connection where the boundary between you and another dissolves. These glimpses are not the goal, they're previews. They're consciousness remembering itself through the form you call you. And the more you taste these moments, the more your manifestation energy shifts from seeking to allowing, from lack to overflow. Here's the bridge Holmes built between Eastern wisdom and practical application. He taught that we don't need to wait for some far-off enlightenment to access this power. We can practice what he called spiritual mind treatment right now. It's a way of speaking to and as the one divine mind, affirming the truth of what already is, rather than begging for what isn't. A spiritual mind treatment for manifestation, informed by non-dual understanding, might sound like this. There is one infinite consciousness, appearing as all of reality. That consciousness is what I am. Not a separate being hoping to receive, but the very source of all abundance temporarily disguised as this person. My desire is not my small self wanting something outside itself. It is infinite consciousness, choosing to experience itself through this new form. And so it is already done, already unfolding, already manifesting through the only one here, awareness itself. Do you feel the difference? You're not asking, you're not hoping, you're recognizing what's already true and allowing it to express. Now we arrive at the paradox that shatters everything you thought you understood about manifestation. What if your deepest desires aren't actually yours? Stay with me here because this might sound absurd at first. You've spent your whole life believing that your wants, your dreams, your preferences are proof of your individual existence. They're what make you you, right? But here's the twist that changes the entire game. The Vedantists discovered something that still scrambles the Western mind. What you call your desire is actually the infinite's desire, wearing your nervous system as a costume. Think about it. Where does a desire come from? You didn't decide to want what you want. The wanting just appears in consciousness, fully formed. You wake up one day and suddenly you're drawn toward a new career, a new place, a new vision for your life. Did you manufacture that desire? Or did it arise mysteriously from somewhere beyond your conscious control? The Bhagavad Gita contains a stunning line that most people miss. I am the desire in beings that is not contrary to Dharma. Krishna, speaking as universal consciousness, is saying, I am your desire. Not all desires, but the ones aligned with your highest unfolding, with the natural order. Those aren't your personal property. They're how the universe moves through you toward greater expression. Here's what this means for manifestation. When a desire arises that won't leave you alone, that keeps pulling you forward despite obstacles, despite fear, that's not your ego wanting something to feel complete. That's consciousness itself, knocking on the door of your awareness saying, I want to experience myself through this new form, and you're the aperture through which it's happening. Alan Watts put it brilliantly, you are something the whole universe is doing, in the same way that a wave is something the whole ocean is doing. Your desire isn't separate from the universe's unfolding. It is the universe's unfolding, localized in the nervous system you call yourself. But here's where it gets really strange and really liberating. If your deepest desires are actually the universe's desires moving through you, then the whole concept of manifestation flips inside out. You're not trying to make something happen. You're trying to stop blocking what's already trying to happen. The Buddhist concept of sunyata illuminates this perfectly. Because everything is empty of separate, inherent existence, everything is also infinitely malleable, infinitely responsive. Your desire and its fulfillment aren't two separate things connected by a gap of time and effort. They're two sides of the same coin, two aspects of one movement. The moment a true desire arises, its fulfillment is already guaranteed, already set in motion. Not because you're going to work hard enough or visualize perfectly enough, but because the arising of the desire is the universe reorganizing itself toward that manifestation. The seed and the tree are one event, separated only by the illusion we call time. Ernest Holmes touched this same truth from a different angle when he taught about the law of mind. He said the universe is a spiritual system governed by laws that are not physical but mental. Every thought, every desire, every intention is already a thing, already real in the mental realm. Manifestation is simply the lag time it takes for the mental realm to densify into physical form. But here's the twist within the twist, the paradox that might just set you free. If all desires are the universe's desires, if manifestation is guaranteed for anything aligned with your dharma, then why do we experience delay? Why does it sometimes feel like we're pushing a boulder uphill? The answer is both simple and profound. Resistance. Not the universe resisting you, but you resisting the universe's flow through you. And that resistance has a name, the illusion of the separate self, desperately trying to control outcomes because it believes its survival depends on getting what it wants. Here's the cosmic joke. The you that wants to manifest is the you that's blocking manifestation. The ego, that habitual pattern of thoughts claiming to be a separate entity, cannot manifest anything because it's not real enough to have creative power. Only consciousness manifests. Only the infinite shapes reality. And the moment you stop trying to manifest as a separate self, the moment you recognize yourself as consciousness itself, manifestation becomes as natural as breathing. The Upanishads call this recognition waking up from the dream of separation. And when you wake up, you realize something shocking. You were never the character in the dream trying to change the dream. You were always the dreamer, dreaming both the desire and its fulfillment into being. So the question stops being, how do I manifest what I want? And becomes, what is trying to manifest through me, and how am I blocking it? Can you feel how different those questions are? The first comes from lack, from separation, from fear. The second comes from curiosity, from surrender, from trust. What if right now your highest manifestation is already in motion, already unfolding, already guaranteed, and the only thing standing between you and its physical appearance is your attachment to being the one in control of how and when it arrives? So you've glimpsed the truth. The separate self is an illusion, and what you call your desires are actually the universe's creative impulses flowing through you. Beautiful, liberating, mind-expanding. But now comes the real question. What do you do with this understanding? How does recognizing your non-dual nature change the way you actually live, choose, and act in this world, where bills still need to be paid and decisions still need to be made? Because here's what we need to be honest about. This insight can be weaponized by the ego in clever ways. The spiritual bypass is real. Some people hear there is no separate self and translate it into, nothing I do matters, or I'll just wait for the universe to deliver everything while I sit on my couch. That's not wisdom. That's laziness wearing a spiritual costume. The Bhagavad Gita addresses this exact trap. Arjuna, faced with a great battle, wants to abandon his dharma, his sacred duty, under the guise of spiritual non-attachment. And Krishna essentially tells him, nice try, but recognizing your true nature doesn't exempt you from engaged action. It transforms the quality of your action. This is the crucial distinction. Non-dual awareness doesn't mean non-action. It means non-attached action. It means showing up fully, giving everything you have, taking inspired steps toward your desires, but without the desperate clinging to specific outcomes that creates suffering. Here's how this plays out practically. Let's say you desire a thriving business. The old paradigm of manifestation says, visualize it, affirm it, believe hard enough, and the universe will deliver. The non-dual understanding says, this desire is consciousness wanting to express abundance through the form called you. Your job is to become a clear channel for that expression. What does being a clear channel look like? It means taking aligned action without attachment. It means doing the work, making the calls, creating the content, having the difficult conversations, learning the skills, but doing all of it from a place of overflowing creativity rather than desperate lack. It means noticing when you're forcing versus when you're flowing. Ernest Holmes taught about the difference between treatment and trying. Treatment is aligning your consciousness with truth and then allowing that truth to express. Trying is the ego attempting to manipulate reality through sheer will. One feels like dancing, the other feels like drowning. Alan Watts warned about what he called the backwards law, the idea that the more you pursue feeling better all the time, the less satisfied you become, because the pursuit itself reinforces the belief that you're not okay right now. Non-dual manifestation inverts this. You start from wholeness, not lack. You act from overflow, not need. But here's where the responsibility piece becomes critical. When you recognize yourself as consciousness itself, you also recognize that you're not just the receiver of reality, you're the creator of it. Every thought, every word, every action is literally shaping the fabric of your experience and contributing to the collective experience. The Vedantists called this karma yoga, the yoga of action. It's the practice of engaging fully with life while remaining unattached to fruits. You plant seeds not because you need the harvest to survive, but because planting seeds is your nature, your dharma, your joy. This means you can no longer hide behind victim consciousness. You can't blame the universe, your parents, your circumstances, or your bad luck when things don't go your way. Because you've seen the truth. There is no out there doing things to you. There's only consciousness playing all the roles, including the role of obstacles that teach you what you need to learn. This is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it means you're responsible for your experience, not in a guilt-inducing, shame-based way, but in an empowering, I am the author of my reality way. Liberating because if you created this, you can create differently. But responsibility also means something deeper. Responsibility, the ability to respond consciously rather than react unconsciously. When a desire goes unfulfilled, the old pattern is to collapse into frustration, doubt, or blame. The new pattern, informed by non-dual wisdom, is to pause and ask, what is this moment teaching me? What attachment am I being invited to release? What deeper truth is trying to emerge? Here's a practical example. You've been affirming abundance, visualizing wealth, doing everything right, but money still feels tight. The ego's response is panic or shame. I'm doing it wrong. I'm not spiritual enough. The universe is withholding from me. The non-dual response is curiosity. Interesting. Consciousness is choosing to experience limitation through this form right now. What if this limitation isn't a problem to solve, but a teacher showing me where I've made money into a false god, where I've confused wealth with worth? Suddenly, the lack becomes a doorway to deeper freedom, not evidence of failure. This understanding also transforms how you relate to others. If there's only one consciousness appearing as many forms, then helping another isn't altruism in the traditional sense. It's consciousness taking care of itself. Your abundance and another's abundance aren't in competition. They're different expressions of the same infinite source. The Mahayana Buddhist concept of bodhicitta captures this perfectly. The awakened heart that recognizes all beings as itself and naturally moves to alleviate suffering wherever it appears. Not out of obligation, but out of the simple recognition that there's no other to be separate from. So the implication of non-dual manifestation is this: you're invited to live with one foot in the absolute and one foot in the relative. In the absolute, you rest as pure awareness, complete, whole, lacking nothing. In the relative, you engage fully with desires, goals, and dreams, but lightly, playfully, without making your peace conditional on outcomes. Ernest Holmes called this living from the already answered prayer. You're not waiting for manifestation to feel complete. You're recognizing completeness now and allowing that completeness to overflow into form. The responsibility is to stay awake, to catch yourself when you slip back into the dream of separation, when you start believing again that you're a small self struggling against a vast, indifferent universe. And when you catch yourself not to judge, but simply to smile and remember, "Oh right, I'm playing hide and seek with myself again. I am the ocean pretending to be a wave, forgetting and remembering endlessly." So here we stand at the edge of the ultimate mystery, the place where all questions dissolve into lived experience. We've journeyed through the philosophy, deconstructed the illusion of the separate self, explored the ancient wisdom and the practical tools. But now, in this final moment, we arrive at something that cannot be taught, only tasted, the recognition of what you've always been. Ernest Holmes spent his life pointing people toward this recognition. He discovered that the power we seek, the divine mind we hope to access, the abundance we dream of manifesting, none of it exists in some distant realm waiting for us to become worthy. It's here. It's now. It's what's reading these words. The Vedantists had a teaching method called neti neti, which means not this, not this. They would ask the student, "Are you your body?" No, because you can observe your body. Are you your thoughts? No, because you can watch thoughts arise and pass. Are you your emotions? No, because you can witness emotions without being consumed by them. Strip away everything you're not, and what remains? The Upanishads answer with thunderous simplicity: pure awareness, consciousness itself, the witnessing presence that has been constant through every experience of your life, from childhood to this moment. And that witnessing presence, it's not yours, it's not personal. It's the same awareness looking out through every pair of eyes on this planet, the same consciousness dreaming itself into the multitude of forms we call the universe. Alan Watts loved to point out the absurdity of our linguistic habits. We say, "I am aware," as if awareness is something we possess or do. But what if it's the other way around? What if awareness is what you are and I is just a thought appearing within it, a grammatical convenience that hardened into a false identity? Here's the ultimate implication for manifestation. If you are not a separate self but consciousness itself, then every desire that arises in your awareness is consciousness desiring to know itself in a new way. Your dream of abundance? That's the infinite playing with the experience of flourishing through your nervous system. Your longing for love? That's consciousness yearning to experience unity through the dance of relationship. Nothing is personal, and yet everything is sacred. Nothing belongs to you, and yet everything is you. The Buddhist Heart Sutra contains one of the most profound statements ever uttered. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Your desires, your manifestations, your entire life is form. Temporary, ever-changing, made of the same emptiness that makes up stars and atoms and dreams. And yet this emptiness isn't nothing. It's pregnant with all possibilities, the womb of creation itself. So what does this mean for you right now with your specific desires and challenges and questions? It means you can stop trying so hard. Not stop acting, but stop the exhausting effort of pretending to be a separate self who must control reality to survive. You can rest in the recognition that you are the ocean, temporarily playing at being a wave, and the ocean is always supporting you because it is you. It means your manifestations will come or they won't, and either way, you remain whole, not because you've numbed yourself to desire, but because you've remembered that your essence is unshakable, untouchable by the coming and going of circumstances. It means you're invited to play the game of life with utter seriousness and complete lightness at the same time. Take bold action toward your dreams. Visualize, affirm, do the practices, but hold it all like a master artist holds a paintbrush, with skill, with focus, with love, but without forgetting that the art and the artist are one movement. Ernest Holmes taught that we live in a spiritual universe governed by mental and spiritual laws. But what if the highest law is this? There is only one consciousness and it's playing all the parts, the manifester and the manifested, the seeker and the sought, the question and the answer. The Tao Te Ching ends with this mysterious teaching. The sage does nothing, yet nothing is left undone. This is the pinnacle of non-dual manifestation, not the doing of a separate self trying to bend reality to its will, but the natural unfolding of reality through a form that has stopped resisting its own nature. Here's the final paradox, the one that contains all the others. You cannot become what you are. You can only recognize it. And in that recognition, everything changes and nothing changes. You're still here in a body with desires and dreams and daily life, but the one living this life is no longer the frightened, separate self. It's infinite consciousness, joyfully experiencing itself through the unique aperture you call your name. So the question isn't, how do I manifest my dreams? The question is, who is dreaming? And when you discover the answer, when you realize you are the dreamer and the dream, manifestation becomes what it always was. Consciousness playing with itself, creating and destroying, seeking and finding, hiding and revealing, in an endless dance of love with its own infinite nature. And that, my friend, is both the secret and the joke. There's no one here to get it wrong, and nowhere else to arrive. You're already home. You've always been home. The power Ernest Holmes spoke of isn't something you'll gain tomorrow through better practice. It's what you are when the illusion of being something other than consciousness finally, mercifully, dissolves. Rest there, act from there, manifest from there, not as a technique but as your birthright, because the truth the sages have been whispering across millennia is this: you are not in the universe. The universe is in you, and it always has been. Light this journey into the deepest waters of manifestation. Hit subscribe for more explorations of consciousness and reality. And that's our hunt for now, a wild fusion of Ernest Holmes's science of mind, Vedantic non-dualism, and the ancient wisdom of awakened beings, grounded in bibliographical sources and direct philosophical transmission. What mysteries will you discover in your own awareness?